there's not going to come a time where I'm not going to talk about the power that business leaders have to change society.
I'm so excited to welcome one of my idols, Bianca Robinson.
And I appreciate lots of small things and all the small things, and I have a fierce gratitude practice.
She is the CEO of CEO Sleepout UK, mobilising business leaders to tackle homelessness and poverty. She has raised millions for homelessness charities. As a speaker and leader, she is raw, honest and compelling, inspiring audiences to take action and make real change. If you could go back and speak to your younger self in your 20s, what would you say? What would you tell her to do differently? Time to Speak is a space to pause, think and talk about the power of voice and the art of human connection. Through open conversation with leaders and changemakers, we explore how voice, presence and authentic connection shapes who we are, how we lead, and the impact we make in our work and lives. Welcome to Time to Speak. Bianca Robinson, welcome to Time to Speak. How are you feeling today?
Well, I'm feeling slightly recovered because we had our flagship London CEO Sleepout on Monday night. So Friday now, I've had a few hours sleep since then. But that was a culmination of a series of 20 CEO Sleepout events. And just for your dear listener, a CEO Sleepout event is we gather business people to spend a night literally sleeping outside beneath the stars. So, and we like to do it in winter. So they're sleeping out with a sleeping bag, a roll mat or some cardboard. And yeah, we're in a safe place, but they are in the elements. And, you know, I think it got down to about -1 degrees overnight at Lord's with the wind literally whipping through like you wouldn't believe. And 103 people came and, you know, made that stand, slept out in solidarity with people who are homeless or really, you know, at risk of homelessness in London. So how do I feel? I feel fantastic. I feel a sense of enormous achievement. I feel rested. And I feel like, you know, the year has come to a triumphant, you know, well, it's coming to a triumphant close after a lot of hard work.
Yeah. I just heard the dog barking there in the background. So where are you at the moment while you're taking a rest?
I'm in the lovely south coast of England. So I normally live in the northeast coast. Saltburn by the Sea is my home. But I am taking a little break in Lymington, which is on the south coast, you know, sort of overlooking the Isle of Wight.
Oh, wonderful and well deserved.
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not that I'm not working. I am working, but I'm working in a place where I'm also resting, getting fresh country air, walking, and yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. But so you said you've done 20 sleep outs so far this year. Is that right? So how many sleep outs would you normally do in a year?
Well, about that, we're trying to kind of bring more in, because
Mm.
always more towns and cities that will benefit from a CEO Sleepout event and the business community. You know, I think we've now got over the last 12 years some kind of brand reach and brand credibility, and people in towns and cities in the UK that haven't had this concept before know of it. And so it's about expanding that. So we would normally do 18 to 20 a year.
Right.
But we're looking to up that to maybe 24 next year. It might be a bit ambitious.
Fingers crossed.
Like, we're a tiny team, Audrey. So I've got myself full time. I've recently hired another full timer to kind of build events in Sheffield. Dan, he's done a phenomenal job getting the Sheffield, Shrewsbury event and Cardiff off the ground this year. Um, I've got two part-timers who work the equivalent of 2 days a week, so not even a full-time equivalent. And that is it. So to pull those 20 events together across the year, it just takes a superhuman effort from me and my team. And we make it work, and we manage to punch above our weights. And let's just see, it's slowly, because we want to maintain that idea of being a very lean charity, which we are.
Mm.
We don't want to expand. We don't want to overinflate our team. We don't want to end up paying this ginormous wage bill with the money that's raised by people going out and actually doing this hard thing. But we want to be able to deliver and deliver well on what
Mm.
we say we're going to do. So I think we walk that tightrope, and I think we do that in a pretty decent fashion.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I slept out in Lords the first time, so it was November, and I remember how cold it was. It was pretty damp as well at the time. And I've also slept out for CEO Sleepout in York. Actually, York was colder
Yeah.
and and wet, very, very wet.
Mm.
Um, but I remember the first time I met you was at Lords,
Yeah.
and I saw you speaking, and you were so passionate and so inspiring, and literally stood there in as many layers as you could pack on, your hat, your gloves. We were all stood there, all wrapped up with millions of layers on, which, we're lucky enough to do that, right? In the real world, it's
We've
not
got the gear.
it's not
Yeah.
as easy as that. Or, it was in terms of what people have to go through, it was easy for us. It didn't stop me um, as a participant, as a business leader, looking at you and thinking, oh my God, that woman is incredible. And I was so drawn in by what you said. How did it feel the first time you ever spoke about homelessness? Can you remember that?
I felt like I didn't know anything about anything, Audrey. I had such a lot to learn, and my audience is these SME, small to medium enterprise business owners, business leaders, people who are keen to make a difference. They want to make an instant impact. They want to see what it's all about.
Mm.
And so my role really, I saw it as to motivate them and unlock their understanding, their compassion, so that they could unlock their power really
Yeah.
as responsible business leaders. But in order to do that, in order to be credible, I had to learn an awful lot about the situation of inequality, the
Mm.
poverty situation, and the homelessness situation in the UK. And learning the statistics is one thing, and they're always shocking every year. I mean, I've just this year we've got 380,000 people registered homeless. 150 plus of those are children. So you learn the statistics.
Mm. That's shocking.
Yeah.
That's really upsetting.
Yeah, and 13,000 13,500 rough sleepers just in London.
Mm.
Yeah. And but behind every statistic is a human story. So, 150,000 children homeless in the UK. What does that mean? What does that actually mean? Well, it means that children are being bounced from temporary digs to temporary digs, and those digs might look like some landlord housing with mold crawling up the walls and water running down the walls, or whatever, um, to a hotel room where they can't cook,
Yeah.
um, to a shipping container, to someone's garage. I mean, you just don't know what that looks like, but they're being bounced about. Um, if a council offers you accommodation, it's quite often not in your borough, might be 125 to 200 miles away. So the parent has to decide, well, do I take my child out of school? Do I sack off my job? Do I
Mm.
bus in? What, how does it work? Then if they refuse that offer of accommodation, they make themselves intentionally homeless, and nobody that basically the council will wash the hands of you, and then you are fending for yourself however you can. And so the situation is just so complex.
Mm.
I had to then learn, well, what are the drivers of homelessness from lack of housing in this country? And why? Why is there a lack of homes? To mental health, to addiction and recovery, to veterans homelessness, to women's refuge and domestic violence, to the care system, foster care system, which is probably the shortest walk to homeless aside from prison leavers. Um, and it's this ginormous Venn diagram of problems without solutions, and no desire for anybody, the powers that be, to fix them. And a society where we've become institutionally hardened
Yeah.
to homelessness. and would
Yeah.
just walk past rough sleepers on the street because what can I do? What can I really do? If I give them money, it doesn't help. We're at a loss for solutions, and there's no political will. So the picture is really bleak, and I've had a lot of times where it's gotten on top of me, what can we do? And I just figure if I keep banging the drum about the SME block in this country and the power that it has, and
Yeah.
just to give you a picture of the kind of power base that we're talking about, the SME block is responsible for 32 trillion in turnover annually, 16 million people employed in the SME sector. So I think that there's a huge, enormous power here. There's an opportunity and there's a social responsibility. So if we all, we can make a difference if we all work together. I think if I got 1% of that SME block hearing my message and actually going into their business saying, okay, we're going to do something, we're going to strengthen the security felt by our workforce, or we're going to look at our resources and offer some kind of, I don't know, there's so many things an SME can do. We'll come on to that, but there's so many things to do to strengthen their communities. If 1% actually did something, you'd see inequality kind of reducing and would see strengthening. But if 10% did, we'd move mountains.
Yes.
We'd move mountains in this country. If we galvanized and mobilized 10% of SMEs to create real social value, like really integrate the communities into their business, it'd just be magical.
There's so much there. There's so much in what you just said there. I
Yeah.
still want to get from you, because I want to go back to a lot of those things. But when I asked you the question, I said, how did it feel speaking for the first time? And
Well,
you
you didn't
said that,
step in front of people and actually,
yeah. I mean, because I like you've just responded there with so much information to hold all of that information. And I know you're extremely empathetic to hold all of that and such empathy for the people who are struggling and then stand and deliver and inspire. That must have been quite overwhelming the first time you did it.
yeah. And so it's that very first thing I said, which was I felt like I didn't know anything about anything. That's a huge imposter syndrome right there.
Yes.
Because who am I? Because who the hell am I? I did a bit of sofa surfing in London when I was about 23 years old, but nothing that felt that I was really close to the brink. But
Mm.
and I'd grown up in New Zealand and I'd never really seen a lot of homelessness in New Zealand at that time. So how did I feel? Yep, imposter syndrome. Um, I had done public speaking in my former career and life. So I knew that if I got my facts right, I could deliver with conviction.
Mm.
Um, and I thought, okay, well, if I'm thrown in, because I was really thrown in the deep end, I didn't start this charity, just to give context. I was drafted in after Andy Preston, the Middlesbrough businessman who started it. He'd built it up over 4 years himself in his spare time voluntarily. And he's a high profile guy. He ended up being the elected mayor of Middlesbrough in 2018, 2019, 2020, 21. He threw me in the deep end, really. And he was like,
Mm.
Bianca, you just need to do this. And so I kind of, I think I like the challenge of that. I like the challenge of that. So the first time I stood up and talked, yep, there was imposter syndrome. I never talk from a script. So I have the beats that I'm going to hit,
Yeah.
and the kind of numbers and the statistics in my head, the story that I'm going to tell. I have that there. I think I was absolutely crap. But bear in mind, I've had 104 of these under my belt now, Audrey, and lots of
Yeah.
speaking opportunities. So, but probably the first year, I wasn't getting it right, but I had lots of opportunities to hone it, refine it, see what worked, see what hit that emotional nerve with the audience. So, yeah, but the first time, yeah, probably 0 stars.
I love what you say though about repetition, because that's how you learn to speak, isn't it? You learn to speak by speaking.
Yeah.
So you can spend so much time thinking about it, plotting, preparing, which I think is very important. That's what I advocate. But if you don't actually get up and put it into practice over and over again, it's very difficult to improve. And it's like a muscle as well. You need to keep flexing it. If you get out of practice, you might lose confidence again, and then you've got to, start all over again. So it's good that you had that repetition over time.
And lucky, because, really lucky that I'm in a role where I get to do that and
Yeah.
keep seeing if things still work and keep changing it and refining it and, yeah, packing that emotional
Yeah,
punch.
I also think you're. I'm not sure the word is lucky actually. Um, I think it's a good thing that you're in the position you're in because what you're talking about will never be a waste of time for anybody listening. It's never going to be just hot air. It's always going to bring value. This is a big thing for me. I really struggle with speakers who speak for the sake of speaking because they want to be seen. That's never going to be your cause. Your cause is, I need to stand here and say these things to you to help you understand, to deliver a clear message and challenge you to take action. And I love that about what you do, what you have to do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's brilliant. It's admirable.
And say there comes a day where I'm no longer the CEO of CEO Sleepout charity. I will always be talking about this because this is now my purpose.
Mm,
There's not gonna come a time where I'm not gonna talk about the power that business leaders have to change society. That's
yes.
that's the number one thing, and that will stay with me.
Yeah, you talked about a couple of things earlier on where you mentioned a lack of political will and also business owners, leaders, SMEs not really knowing how they can help. So let's look at those things. When you mentioned about lack of political will, I'm thinking, has there been has there been a change in the whole time that you've been involved in CEO Sleep Out? Has there been any development? Has there been a shift at all?
There's the only time you saw a concerted effort to protect people who are sleeping rough, and that, by the way, is just the tiny tip of the iceberg when it comes to homelessness, was in the first lockdown where a scheme called Everyone In took place. It was a protocol, and within 3 days, every single council in the UK had to get every rough sleeper into accommodation, and they did.
Wow.
They did it. They got them into hostel/hotel accommodation during lockdown, and it worked incredibly well. And the statistics are, for those people who went through the Everyone In, they were housed. The statistics show, and I can't tell you the exact figure, but a majority of those went on to stable and secure accommodation afterwards.
It's shocking to me because obviously my first question is going to be if they can do it so easily, and I understand it was a very different situation, but if the capability is there to make something like that happen in such a short space of time, why has there been no energy behind finding a way to develop that formula going forward? Is it because it's just not viable? W- Do you know
It will
why?
be around cost. There'll be no budget for it because you'll be
Yeah.
paying, for that accommodation. So um, presuming that's why. But when you run the figures, it actually costs the government less to solve homelessness than to allow the cost to the society and the taxpayer to run on and on and on and on indefinitely.
Yeah.
So who knows? But
Who
ultimately,
knows?
it's the move on housing. So we don't have the homes. So we can get them in a hotel, possibly, but we don't have the homes. We don't have
Mm.
that. And we need 150,000 homes a year for 10 years to create the homes. Um, and, you know, where does that budget come from? And in a market where there's a lot of resistance to home building, people like their house prices going up. They don't like the effect that that has on housing inflation. So But it has to happen. It has to happen for lots of different reasons, not just homelessness. We have to have more homes and more,
Yeah,
more homes.
yeah, absolutely. It's a societal issue, isn't it? It's not just
Mhm,
an issue for homelessness. It's all our society. We need to think about a solution for this.
mhm.
Okay, so then if we move seamlessly on to what could leaders do, um, as well as getting a sleeping bag and raise money, what else could they be doing?
Well, I actually think they need to. I think they need to think less about GDP
Mm,
growth and more about a well-being economy. Now,
mm,
there are nations that do this. New Zealand, where I'm from, during the kind of tenure of Jacinda Ardern, was measuring its success based on a well-being economy, and it's a it's a well-known model.
mm,
Norway, believe, and Finland do this. Um, so listen, a well-being economy is how how well is your society running? How healthy is your society?
mm.
How much inequality is in your society? Are
Yeah,
people living a decent standard of life? Have they got the very first layer of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? The right to, food, shelter, whatever. Is that in place? Because in this country, it ain't. It ain't happening. So,
yeah,
um, have we got the basics right? And GDP, to me, is a race to the bottom. Clearly you can see that it's a race to the bottom. Now, I will get pushback for saying this, um, because people will say, well, it creates jobs, it creates blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, that's one argument, but it's creating runaway inequality at the moment, which is
mm,
now unignorable, unignorable. So if you're just measuring on how much the stock market's grown, the housing prices have gone up, how, all of the markers of GDP growth, how much
mm,
trade and export is bringing in, you're leaving behind a section of society who can't, you know, even people on a decent wage working a solid 40-hour week can no longer afford their private
mm.
rental accommodation. You haven't got things right. You haven't
Yeah.
got it right. So I think that big picture is stop chasing GDP and start looking at the well-being of the people living in your society. More picture is a lot of different things.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel there is any specific political party that would support what you're saying right now? The reason why I'm asking you that is because you said you get pushback, and I agree. Whenever we say something like that, you're going to get pushback because everyone's so fearful. Like we're all worried that we're not going to earn enough money or grow enough to be sustainable, because that's the language. It's very much out there that, and we all, as business owners and leaders, we're pushed to strive for that. And I'm thinking it's really hard for a politician or a particular party to actually say, no, let's look at this. Let's take a different route and consider the well-being of our society as a whole, because they're likely to be shot down, which is not what we want, but it's likely that would happen.
Yeah, I think you have to look at who's funding who as well. So, currently billionaires and big business are calling the shots because that's where the money is.
Mm,
And um, and ultimately you have to put money in the treasury one way or another. And um, it's difficult. But you asked me, is there a political party? I'm watching the Greens very carefully, but I think that they're in danger of the same. If you've got Reform saying whatever it wants to say, knowing it will never be held to account, you're in danger of the parties on the left saying the same. But watching them carefully, um, I just think it's not about the leaders. It's not top down. It's got to come bottom up. We've got to
mm.
drive the change. And society always moves first and then the policies follow. We put pressure
Yes.
on the policymakers and the policies follow. We don't know what to ask for. We don't know how we're being destroyed really by inequality. We don't really understand the mechanisms that are doing that. And I think if we did, we'd be furiously angry. But currently, our anger is being wrongly misdirected to minority groups, and that's not the problem. The problem
Mm.
is that wealth's being hoovered into the coffers of, large funds and large billionaires and big business, and even the housing stock is, and it's becoming unaffordable for all of us, driving inequality. So that's a big conversation, and these are my personal views, Audrey. Not CEO Sleepout's views. Just to caveat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. But I think if we need to just keep driving social change on the ground and
Mhm.
groundswells of support.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate actually the way you pushed it back to us. Each and every one of us, we all can make a difference in our way, as long as we're doing something, um, and keep pushing forward for that change. You mentioned Jacinda, um, and when you actually came to Leeds to an event that I was speaking at, you sat there in the front row and watched me deliver my presentation on speaking, and I actually played an extract um, of Jacinda speaking, and you were moved to tears. I spotted you as I was speaking. Tears were rolling down your face. Can you remember that?
Yeah. Okay.
What brought that emotion on?
Well, there's so many things in the mix there. I feel a sense of pride about the way she led the country through so many extreme challenges, that you
Yeah.
wouldn't wish upon any leader, a religiously, ideologically driven white supremacist massacre of
Mm.
a mosque, people in a mosque, but citizens of Christchurch, and then a volcano erupted and killed, nearly 50 people. And stepping into her premiership on the day after she discovered she was pregnant,
Yeah.
um, and then a global pandemic, and she kept that country safe. And my daughter went to live in New Zealand in August 2020. From Saltburn by the Sea, she took herself to New Zealand to live a free life. I'd locked her down. She got depressed. She'd already started living her adult life in Newcastle. I went and kidnapped her, locked her down in the house, and you could see her mood going downhill. And her solution was to go to New Zealand because she's a New Zealand citizen as well as a UK citizen. She had that privilege. She went and lived a free life. She got a degree. She managed a restaurant on the waterfront. She made a whole load of new friends. They lived this incredible life. And I was crying because New Zealanders have no frame of reference for what it was like to be locked down for as long as we were, to watch neighbours being carried out of their homes, to never be seen again, to lose friends, to have to, attend funerals or not attend funerals of loved ones. And New Zealanders turned against Jacinda, without really understanding what a miracle she had worked in that. And so I was crying for pride and also just almost it was genuine sadness that this amazing human who did so much was brought so low by a
Mm.
very noisy minority of New Zealanders who were whipped into a frenzy by kind of, ideological m- messaging, like mega style, and brought her down.
I mean, it is incredibly sad. I'm hoping she's in a really good place now and enjoying her life as it is now. Um, I remember the speech that I played. She was talking about being a hugger and a crier. and that at one point she questioned that behavior because people commented on it, and she wondered whether she should hug people when they were in crisis. And she said she did. She said, no, I just went and did it because that's who I am. And what I enjoy seeing in her is the strength in her vulnerability. It is evident, incredible, and powerful. What do you think about that?
She's hugely courageous because she had the courage to just be herself.
Mm,
And it's that level of, I am going to be who I am no matter what pressures are on me to be different and to behave differently. Um, it just is it's so inspired me, you know. And there's that famous picture that went around the world of her husband and her. She's making faces at her baby in the UN General Assembly. Do you remember that?
yeah, yeah.
Very famous. But I know that her first thought when that went out was, oh my God, people are going to think that here I am and it's a breeze being a mum, being a prime minister, doing the UN, and we can do it all. And she was very keen to say that she had this huge support network around her that enabled that to happen.
Mm,
But despite that, she's just felt able to be completely who she is and not compromise her personal values, which it becomes clearer, kindness and leadership
mm,
is probably at the top. And her book, A Different Kind of Power, is, really a great read, and it explains how those values were shaped and honed and molded throughout her upbringing.
mm.
And so it's genuine. It's not, she doesn't put on an act. She's not, someone says she's a wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm thinking, how, how is she a wolf in sheep's clothing? Not everyone gets everything right. And,
Yeah.
you know, and of course she didn't get everything right. She's a human being.
Mm.
Wasn't out to get you. She was out there to make life better for the majority of New Zealanders, and I think she did.
Yeah, and having to make assertive and difficult decisions doesn't make you a bad person. It's your job at that level to
Mhm.
do that.
You
And I
can't
think
please
she
all
did it with great grace.
She really did. You can't please all of the people all of the time. You're just never going to.
Yeah. And a great ambassador for New Zealand. I
Mm.
always think political leaders should, when they speak, especially when that message is going global as it would do at that level, it's important to remember that you are an ambassador for your nation, and how do you want your nation to be seen globally? And I think she did a great job at representing her country in a very positive light on the whole, as far as I'm aware from what I saw. I think she was brilliant at it. And authenticity, for me, is the key to success when it comes to representing yourself
Yeah.
and others in a positive light. And I think you do that as well for CEO Sleepout, I must say, when I've seen you speak and when the way you carry yourself, because obviously we say so much without speaking, don't we? So it's in your actions as well as in the words that you say.
I don't know. I don't. I'm 52 now, Audrey. So I think, I'm done with. I am absolutely done with putting on an act and even airs and graces. I'm a Kiwi. I swear like a sailor. You know, it's, that is who I am. It's gonna come out. So if I'm judged, I'm judged. I actually, I'm done caring. I just, yeah, I want people to see the real thing and I feel the genuine passion I have, and you know, and now I allow it to come through. I think in my 20s and 30s even, I was having to put on a front in my work and my career and my life, partly because of fear, imposter syndrome, all of the things. I wasn't fully developed as a human being, didn't know really who I was, or I didn't have confidence that the real me would be impressive or have any impact. I just didn't know. So you fit into a mold and
Just thinking about that, because there are so many young women who still do exactly what you were doing in your 20s. I know I was doing the same thing. If you could go back and speak to your younger self in your 20s, what would you say? What would you tell her to do differently?
Well, I would say contemplate. Knowing who you are and your values takes contemplation. You don't, it's not sitting in the top of my head. This is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is how I make my decisions going through life. This is what drives them. You don't understand that, I think, consciously. I think it takes a lot of mining, deep, deep mining work to kind of figure that out and really, really sit with it. And it takes life experiences to show you who you are and how you behave. And so as a 20-year-old to say you need to be authentic is really difficult because they're discovering themselves. But I think you could say, well, when you are out there, just just uh, tr- try and be as genuine as you can. I don't know. I know it's one of the hardest things for a young person to really do because they're trying to fit themselves everywhere and without really knowing who they are. It's a really difficult one, but yeah, it's don't be afraid. Don't be afraid if you've got an opinion that differs from somebody else. Be respectful about it, but don't be afraid to share it. Or if you think that you want to stand up for something that's not being stood up for, just do it. Do it anyway.
Yeah, 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 absolutely right. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to create a podcast called Time to Speak, because I think all of the time about how if we just took a little bit more time to step back and think about how we want to be heard and how we want to be seen, we can connect with that inner intuition, and usually that will be the right answer
Mm.
and guide us towards showing up as the person we want to be seen and heard. I do agree it might be harder when we're younger. As you
Mm.
say, we're trying to find our feet and figure out what our identity really is. You and I have the luxury of being in middle age and a bit more sure of that, having probably been a bit scarred and wounded as we go on in life. That does help you to care less as you move on. But yes, just taking that time to really think about what's important to you and why you want to say certain things and why you want to be in the position you're in at that time, what it means to you. I think all of that is really valuable advice. Thank you, Bianca. I was just thinking as you were talking about Jacinda and New Zealand, do you miss New Zealand?
I really do miss New Zealand. Yeah, I do. And right about now, I would normally be on a plane taking a 5-week New Zealand kind of working break because I never really get to down tools, but I see my family usually once a year, with the exception of in the pandemic. But my daughters, who both live in Wellington now, are coming back for
Oh,
Christmas to see their UK-based family. So I'm not going this year. And
oh,
I'm gonna really miss my friends and my cousins and my sister and my mum and all of that. Um, but I've now lived in Saltburn by the Sea longer by 1 year than I ever lived in Wellington, New Zealand.
wow.
That's like that's a real question of my identity. I'm always going to be a Kiwi. I'm always going
Mm.
to be a Wellingtonian, but I made a life in Saltburn by the Sea, and I really loved the life that I made there. It's been really good to me. And so, yeah, I hit that tipping point. So it's really my home. It's really, Teesside is my home. You know?
How did you find yourself in Teesside?
Well, I married a chap that was from Saltburn,
Ah,
and we did live in New Zealand for a couple of years, but then we came back. And I think that because families in the north of England are so close, Audrey, they're so
yeah.
close, and he was so homesick. Whereas New Zealanders, once you fledge, see ya.
Oh, really?
Maybe. You expect to go and you're expected to go. And, it's we love our families, but we don't feel like we I guess, yeah. There was something about Greg and his family, he really needed to be back near his family, and it was kind of a really good thing that we did because despite having, you know, everyone has a roller coaster of a life.
Mm.
We did have that, but despite that, we managed to raise the kids in a beautiful place, and they've had a very safe and secure upbringing, and we've had good times. And that beach in Saltburn by the Sea has saved my life many times over, Audrey.
Yeah.
Looking at that sea and how it changes every single day, it's never the same. Magic.
I love when I feel like I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. I love going and standing and looking at the sea because it reminds me how small my problems are and how big the world is and how powerful that sea is, and just helps me put everything into perspective.
So, so true, so true.
Yeah.
And many challenges I've had and just regulates.
Mm. You
Regulates.
have had challenges. You're not just a fighter for other people, you're a fighter for yourself as well. So you had breast cancer, didn't you, a
Yeah.
while back? How are you now?
I'm great. I'm great. 5 years all clear. So long may that continue. And
Yes.
I lead a fairly healthy life. And, um, I don't, there are certain things that, you know, here we go. There's certain things that I believe, if there's a self denial associated for me with cancer, and there's a bitterness and resentment that I was carrying that I associate with that cancer, and people, can choose to believe that or not. But I think that I've dealt with so many things um, that have lifted those toxic loads from my shoulders and out of my body.
Mm.
Hope that I mean, who knows? But I feel healthy. I feel mentally well, and um, I can recommend therapy to anyone because a good therapist is worth their weight in gold. Um, but yeah, physically well, and that was a journey in 2020 during lockdown. Um, and I came out of surgery 3 days before we trundled Amber down to Heathrow and put her on the plane to New Zealand. So it was a
Crikey.
yeah.
So actually, my next question to you was going to be, at that time when you're going through something, I don't know how you would have felt at that time. Everybody deals with cancer differently. It's an extremely emotive time, and from my perspective, I'm thinking about human connection and how we could communicate with our loved ones at that time. And I was going to say to you, it must have been so important for you at the time that you had your daughters with you and had people around you who could give you support. And then you just said, "Oh, my daughter left 3 days later," and I'm just thinking, crikey, that must have been hard.
Well, actually, no. The hardest thing was them being in the house, both of them, and they're twins, by the way, so they were 20 at the time. And me coming back with this news, right? Well, I've got this lump. What we're going to do is there's going to be they're going to tell me what type of cancer it is, and then we'll do the steps, and then we'll have a surgery, and then I'll know, and whatever. And breaking that news to them. Now, I'm very pragmatic, and I minimize drama.
Mm.
And so the way I sort of said it to the kids, I just wanted them to take their cue from me, that not to get panicky or over emotional about things, and just understand that we were doing everything that we could to get on top of it, which they did. But there's
Mm.
no way of me knowing what went on really behind closed doors between the two of them in terms of them supporting each other. So there was a 5-month period where I was going through all this before Amber got on that plane, before I had surgery. Well, not 5 months, but July, August, yeah, 4 month before I had surgery. And you know, I know that they hid stuff from me
Right.
about their processing
Mm.
because they didn't want to burden me with it. And I hid stuff from them about my processing for the same reason.
Yeah.
But what I did have, and I do have, is this incredible community in Saltburn of friends who came and sat in my front garden, and we had that amazing summer. So we had sunny day every day, walk on the beach, sit in the front garden, talk, connect, support.
Yeah.
And I called on that support. I called on it. And you don't know really it's there until you need it. And I'd taken it for granted. And I don't do that now. And those friends people who could empathize who've been through it, just came out of the woodworks. I got meals delivered to the door from neighbors. It's just amazingly beautiful human kindness
Yes.
at that time.
Yes. It is wonderful, Bianca, but I think you were receiving that human kindness and connection because you actually give it out. So you have to give to receive. It's a two-way street, isn't it, with communication?
I sometimes feel a bit useless with my friends, but I do a good party. I throw them a good party every now and again.
Well, there you go. There you go. You make up for it in party
Yeah.
nights.
Yeah, we can find joy, and that's kind of my role.
Yeah, and it's wonderful because I see joy in your eyes and your smile whenever I see you,
Thank you.
even though you're dealing with a very serious issue and sleeping out in the cold regularly. Um, there's always a big smile on your face, and I think that's just um, it,
Joy de vivre. It is
yes.
literally joy of being alive, and, I think probably, having a cancer diagnosis definitely sharpened really focused that kind of appreciation for life that I have. I've always had it, but it really, really, now there's very little that I take for granted, and I appreciate lots of small things and all the small things, and I have a fierce gratitude practice. And I make no apologies for, making things wonderful and incredible and magical and, I just do.
It's good that you say you make no apologies because I was then going to say to you, because we're coming to the end and I'm dying to know, I think I'll ask everybody this question. Have you ever said anything you regret?
All the time. Um, all the time. And I I'm not even getting better at not doing it, which is you'd think you'd learn from your mistakes. Um, in a huge, I know what you mean. I think you probably mean in a way that has big consequences and sweeping consequences.
Not necessarily, because I think, yes, it could be that, but sometimes I think we might say something we will regret because and regret it because we don't want to be seen in a certain light, or think, God, I wish I'd never said that. Or it could be very personal to you. It doesn't have to be you as a leader. I just think, again, it's a question that I ask because I do think if we took an extra breath and took a step back before we say the thing, sometimes we might come out with the right thing. However, I love your answer. Oh, I say the wrong thing all of the time. Um, but anyway, can you give me an example anyway? Sorry, I shouldn't have butted in there.
I suppose I'll give you a big example. I pulled a lever in in a workplace, which was a grievance procedure, which I should never have done. And although I think I had a genuine grievance, it didn't make my life any better for
Mm.
pushing that button. So you got to think, okay, well, so now I think, well, what's the outcome for the greater good? And almost sometimes, can I make a sacrifice for what I think is, indignant, righteous anger? Can I sacrifice that for peace, harmony, an easier life? Now, existentially, that is really hard because we do have to go through hard stuff, Audrey, in life. And we do have to make hard calls and say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. Um, and that then course corrects you onto maybe a better path for you or a more intentional path for you, and reminds you of what you won't accept and won't tolerate. So there's all of that in the mix. But sometimes, is it better to actually create less drama and more ease?
Yes. Yeah,
So, um, and
I know what you mean.
just in day to day, I mean, I sometimes think I don't have a frontal lobe, like an 18-year-old, and things just blurt out, and people are like, "Eh, what are you saying that for?" And yeah, I wish I had more of a filter sometimes.
Well, I actually think that you have great wisdom. And the things you're saying today just seem so authentically human, and very wise words. And I think it's quite affirming for the rest of us to hear you speak so openly and truthfully and honestly. I'm really grateful to you for coming to speak to me today, because I know that you're so busy and this is rest time for you, and you've taken time out of your rest time to speak to me. And I know it takes a lot of energy to do this kind of thing. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you. And I hope you've had a good time chatting
I
away with me
know,
today.
Audrey, honestly, thank you. It's just a joy to speak with someone like-minded like yourself and share my passion, share my the things that I care about that matter to me with your listeners. Thank you.
Thank you. Bianca, just one thing before we go. Is there anything you might want to say to listeners in terms of how they can get involved with CEO Sleepout?
I would love your listeners to get involved. Just jump on our website at ceosleepout.co.uk. Um, I think that people they sign up for a CEO Sleep Out thinking, what the hell have I got myself into? Like, whoa, do I really have to sleep out in 0 degrees? And then take Darlington last week, where it was snowing and -5, and every single person who signed up bar one turned up with their boots blacked and laser clothes, ready to do this, and wake up in the morning feeling like they've done something utterly monumental. So I
Yeah.
think it's well worthwhile. It's a sleep out, wake up, change lives. The wake up call happens. It may well be the life that's changed may well be your own, because you might see the world differently. It's really a fantastic thing to get involved in.
Yeah, I can highly recommend it, having done it myself. It is a life-changing experience, and you do meet amazing people knowing that you're doing something good. So thank you very much for creating the opportunity for us to get out there and actually do something of value. Thank you so much. Bianca, you bought me an amazing steak pie on a snowy day on the moors one day. I don't know if you remember. It's definitely my turn to buy you a pie back.
Love a steak pie with a pastry lid on
Mm.
a cold day. Yeah.
Oh my God. My mouth is watering now. So we've got to make a date, and I'll be there to buy you a steak pie in return. Bianca Robinson, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Audrey, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
So that was the wonderful Bianca Robinson. What a fantastic conversation we had there. As always, Bianca was open and honest and extremely warm. I really appreciate her taking the time to chat with me, taking the time out to speak and connect. That's what this podcast is all about. And it really helps us to think about how we use our voice and how we behave and show up in the world. These conversations are so valuable to me, and I hope you enjoyed that episode and many more. See you soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Time to Speak. If you'd like to listen to more, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and the podcast page on my website, audreywoodhouse.com. This podcast is brought to you by Audrey Woodhouse Honestly Speaking Limited, and it is an Actors Actuality production. See you soon.